thank you so much for coming to watch our presentation. This is super, super fun. I've never done this before. I don't know if you have, Callum.
Nope.
It's slightly ominous because all I can see is Callum's face. I can't see anyone else. So essentially, if you, I think, look on your screen somewhere, there should be a Q&A button. So if you have any questions during this, you can drop them in the Q&A and we will answer them at the end. Hopefully we'll get through all of them, but if not, we've got some email addresses for you to send questions to. So this is a short 20-minute presentation about what graduate schemes are, and specifically our graduate scheme at UKAEA that Callum and I are currently on. So we'll talk a little bit about what UKAEA actually is, what is a graduate scheme, and the kind of opportunities that a graduate scheme can afford you. So my name's Leah Morgan. I'm in my second year on the graduate scheme at UKAEA, which is the final year. And I did physics at the University of Sheffield. I graduated in 2018 and then started at UKAEA in 2018, having taken a wonderful month off. I'm a graduate diagnostic project engineer, which just means I'm a project engineer at UKAEA. So I take projects from sort of concept design stage all the way through to installation. So I work with physicists and technicians. It's very, very fun. And I work in a really, really small group in a really big department. So I'm in the engineering department, but there's a group of about 12 of us who specifically work on the jet diagnostics, which I'll talk about in a second. And I chose the UKAEA graduate scheme because I was really interested in fusion and fusion energy, and UKAEA is very much the place to do that in the UK.
Hello, I am Callum Shanks. As Leah mentioned, I am a first year graduate here at UKAEA. I've only been here for about 8 months now, started in September. I did my undergrad in mechanical engineering at the University of Glasgow, and then I did a master's in fusion energy at the University of York. Like Leah, I'm actually in the same group as Leah, so we do a very similar job, but as you can see, we do sort of different projects from each other, and I've got some work on MassDue as well, the other reactor at Callum. So our roles are quite varied and we're always doing something a bit different from day to day, which is quite cool. Mm-hmm. As to why UKAEA graduate scheme, it's a bit of a long answer to be honest, but essentially I wanted to get into big engineering or something to do with power generation. Scotland doesn't really do much nuclear engineering anymore. It's kind of a lot of decommissioning stuff. So I looked further afield, came across Callum, thought that looks pretty cool, quite like to work there. Didn't think I'd actually get in just off my engineering degree, which is why I did my master's, and then applied and got in, but I probably could have got in off my engineering degree without having to do this master's anyway. So that's the short version.
So UKAEA is the UK Atomic Energy Authority, and we're the UK's fusion research facility. So we're basically sort of a governmental department working specifically in fusion energy. And I don't know what people's backgrounds are. I'm assuming mostly engineers, but it's impossible to tell. So to give a bit of background, fusion energy is essentially the energy the sun uses to get its energy. I said energy too many times. So just like the sun, we fuse hydrogen together by getting it really, really hot in a really strong magnetic field, because the sun uses a gravitational field, we use a magnetic field to smoosh the hydrogen together, and it basically fuses to make helium, some radiation and loads of energy. So our ultimate goal at UKAEA is to get fusion energy on the grid. It's a really awesome thing to be doing. It's a really cool form of energy. Because it's hot, because it has no carbon emissions, plentiful fuels, it doesn't release anything nasty into the environment. So yeah, it's a really fun, really cool place to be working. UKAEA runs JET on behalf of Eurofusion, which is sort of the fusion research body of Europe. So we have loads of European researchers coming all the time, basically to run experiments on JET, which is a big 3-story high nuclear fusion device. And it's awesome. There's a picture of me standing on top of it later in this presentation. I don't want to spoil anything. And we also run the mega amp spherical tokamak upgrade, said it correctly, which is MassDue, which is a slightly smaller, rounder fusion device that is UK owned. So that's our very own reactor. So there's 2 huge big science experiments at UKAEA, and we're based in Oxfordshire. There's a nice little aerial view at the bottom there. And UKAEA has loads of different sections. So although our ultimate goal is fusion research on the grid kind of thing, we have loads of different sections working on specific fusion elements. So we have the remote applications in challenging environments, or RACE department, which is our robotics and remote handling section. So there are a lot of mechanical engineers there, electrical engineers, aerospace engineers working in all different kinds of roles, mostly engineering in that department. So they've taken their expertise in remote handling, which is used on JET because we can't send people in because it's quite a dangerous environment, radioactive and toxic and hot. And they've taken that and applied it to other sectors. So we have, they're taking contracts. They're taking contracts for the space industry and the mining industry, basically anywhere you wouldn't want to send people. We have the materials research facility, which is fairly new, and they're looking at the effects a fusion environment has on materials. So what happens when you take a different kind of metal and heat it up and irradiate it and all kinds of nasty things. It's important our tokamaks or fusion devices don't fall apart. So they're researching things like that. They're also looking for engineers, but also scientists and material researchers, again, in all different kinds of roles, particularly research ones. We have HEAT, which is our active gas handling department. They do research and they basically manage the exhaust systems for our fusion devices. They take chemists, physicists in research roles, in engineering roles. And then we have Callum Centre for Fusion Energy, or CCFE, and that is just our fusion research section. So that's the bit me and Callum work in. And they take physicists in physicist roles, or physicists in engineering roles. And I think it's probably the biggest section, actually. So you can see we take all kinds of people across a range of roles. On top of that, we have construction experts because site is always growing. We have huge finance and sort of HR departments. So we're a fairly big, fairly fancy employer.
Okay, so we thought we'd kind of give you a quick introduction as to what actually is a graduate scheme for anyone who doesn't really know. This is quite a broad brush stroke explanation, but as you can see, it's not a sort of work experience or internship. It's actually a job that you'll be employed to do, but it's a job that you're not quite expected to do the full role that you would normally do if you just joined the company as a normal role that was not on a graduate scheme. So you will be doing a lot of work based on whatever the graduate scheme you're on, but there will also be an element of training on it. So as you can see, it's a paid graduate level role. It's not going to be very high up in an organisation, but it's pretty good pay for leaving university. It can either be one particular job role that you're hired to do, or you could get moved around various different areas of a company to get experience, which may lead to you getting to pick which area you end up being in, or you might have it being decided for you that you perform best in this area, so this is where we're going to hire you for the rest of the graduate scheme. There's no age limit really on a graduate scheme. It's more based off how recently you've left university. So it can be up to almost 3 years having left university, you can still get employed onto a graduate scheme, which is pretty good news if you fancy taking a year out after your degree, which sounds like a really good idea, to be honest. You can take the year out and come back and start working in whatever industry you fancy. Now, as mentioned, there's training alongside the practical experience. So you'll be performing the job that you've been hired for, but the employers will give you extra training to bring you up in the skill set that they will require off of you, I guess, to be able to perform the role to the best of your ability, to make up for any experience that you might not have, seeing as you're coming straight from university and you might not have a few years in industry that other people might have had that won't be on the graduate scheme. And typically it's common to be offered a permanent role off of the graduate scheme once you've completed it. So assuming you've performed satisfactorily or well enough throughout the time of the grad scheme, you will then be doing the same role that you've done on the grad scheme, or you might end up being moved or promoted to another position. Just depends on the company, really. And also graduate schemes can be found in various different industries. You can see we've listed some down here: construction, engineering, physics, property, science, procurement, and many more. So it's not too hard to find them, and pretty much any degree will have some sort of grad scheme associated with it if you fancy going down this route. Now, can I change this? No. The UKAEA graduate scheme, this is becoming a mouthful. We have a 2-year long grad scheme. It typically starts around September time each year. So you'll start in September, and then 2 Septembers later, you will have successfully completed it, typically. We have an 80-20 time split. So 80% of your time will be done performing the job that you've been hired into. So for Leah and me, that is as diagnostic project engineers, playing around with a lot of the diagnostics, etc. on the reactors. But 20% of that time is allocated to training. Now, in your first year, and specifically quite heavily at the beginning of the grad scheme, you will have a lot of this time taken up by the grad scheme itself. So that holds a lot of introductory training and introductions and just kind of settling you in and getting you aware of what the whole site is about and what's going to be happening throughout the course of your 2 years here. After that, we regularly have things called learning lunches. So about once a month, roughly, the graduates will organise a thing called a learning lunch, where we get together, we have lunch, and during this lunch, someone from site will be giving us about a 30-minute talk about something on site. So typically at the beginning, we get introductions to plasma physics and how tokamaks work, and how a jet pulse actually happens, all the steps that are involved in doing it. And the purpose of this is just to get everyone sort of up to speed or on a certain level of understanding about what is actually going on in site. And it's actually quite helpful for getting to know people who you should go speak to if you need things done, because you actually have a face, you know what they're responsible for. So they're very helpful. And we also have the grad forum, which happens once a month, where all the graduates get together, we have a meeting and we discuss things relevant to the grad scheme. So is there anything that could be improved? Do we have any information or ideas that the grad forum or the grad panel might find useful? And we also use it for planning things, so trips to other sites or just general social things, because there's quite a lot of graduates now, and it's a good thing to socialise them all outside of work as well. There are placement opportunities over site. Now, the good thing about this 20% is you can use it for quite a lot of things that you want to do with it. It's free, can't remember the exact word, not quite free range, but you get to direct what your training is for quite a bit of it. So if you wish, you could spend 1 day a week working for an entirely different department if you want to learn how they do things. So like Leah's worked for the neutronics and followed some of our technicians just to get an understanding of what they do and get good experience. And some of the time we work in the control room is allocated to this 20% because we're learning about how different things work on site. At UKAEA, if you get onto the graduate scheme, you are offered a permanent contract. So even after the end of the 2 years on the grad scheme, you will still have a job. And typically you either get promoted in post, so you'll kind of still be doing the same thing you've been doing for the graduate scheme, just at a sort of higher level, or you might end up being, might apply to move to another bit of site if you fancy learning about something else. As I say, it really is dependent on where you want to progress to. You get to decide kind of where you end up. Our graduate scheme is accredited by the Institute of Physics, Institute of Engineering Technicians, and Institute of Mechanical Engineers, which is very helpful if you want to become chartered, either chartered physicist or engineer, etc. And we have professional development schemes on site. which also get allocated a mentor from someone else who's on site to help you get through this process and give you advice. And also, if you just need advice about anything else on site, there's someone you can go speak to that's not necessarily your line manager, which is quite useful as well. As you can see, there's an emphasis on professional development. They really push it here. And if you do decide to go down this route, you will have your membership fees paid for by the organisation as well, which is a nice bonus. Okay. So you can see here is just a quick breakdown of the different specialities that have been hired to the graduate scheme from 2018, and this coming year of graduates will start in September. You can see back in 2018 we had a bit of variation, but this year there's a lot more variety in the specialities that we've hired in. The reason for this is site is going through quite a big expansion right now, and we now need a lot more specialist roles because generic people can't quite cover all the different in-depth details that are now going on. So you can see this is represented in how much variation we have, and this will continue to get more varied as site continues to progress over the next few years, which is going to be quite exciting, to be honest. And also, you can see our gender split is improving over the years. We've managed to increase or improve it over the past 2 years, and this is probably set to increase in the future as well, which is good. So,
so that's an overview of our graduate scheme. As I say, we're both at different stages on it. I'm actually leaving it this September for a real job. I'm just joking, it's a real job. But hopefully I'm moving into another role in our department, so kind of a promotion in post situation. So I thought I'd cover some of the opportunities that a graduate scheme can give you as opposed to another route post-university. As promised, the picture of me stood on top of our fusion device jet is present on this slide. I'm actually 3 stories up in that photo, and I'm devastated that you can't really tell.
Quite scary.
Yeah. So I'd say the big one about graduate schemes is the opportunity to gain real experience in a real job straight out of university. So a degree is obviously sort of the first step. It's one of the things employers are looking for. But after that, they really, really care about you having experience in a role similar to the role you're applying for. So this is the opportunity to gain all that experience while being paid a graduate level salary, like straight out of university. Along with that comes all the responsibility, all the practice at networking, all the team working, everything like that. Responsibility in particular is a big one. If you can show a future employer, hey, I can be trusted with this and this as I was in my previous job, that's a real bonus. For example, my line manager recently asked me if I wanted to get involved with, I think it was 3 million euros, the budget for the project that he wants me to work on next. So that's a big step up in responsibility that I'm really, really excited about, actually. So experience on a graduate scheme is the real bonus. There's obviously, as Callum mentioned, technical and soft skill development. So UKAEA is actually really good in that if you are interested in something that you think would benefit you in your professional development, but not necessarily your job, the graduate scheme can help you go on that course. And if you're interested in something that you think would benefit your job, your department can often help fund that as well. So in the year above me, one of my friends decided she would be really interested in attending, I think it was a 2-week-long space robotics course, which at the time we did not do at UKAEA. But her department was happy for her to go. I think they contributed to paying for some of it. I think the graduate scheme might have done the rest. But she essentially went out to Berlin for 2 weeks, learned about space robotics, and now she is the space robotics expert at RACE. So there's some really exciting opportunities if there's something you're interested in. In terms of soft skills, things like communication, project management, I've forgotten all of the soft skills. Presentations, I've already said. But yeah, there's the opportunity to develop not only your technical, but also how you present, how you write, how you communicate with other people. My year group was recently sent on a leadership training course in Devon. It was a week long and it was really exciting. We did a lot of outdoors things, a lot of sort of learning from each other and discussing our leadership styles. And it was really interesting to see people who wouldn't ordinarily go for a leadership role be forced into a leadership role. Not forced, it was all fun. I would talk more about it, but our year group is trying to hide it from Callum's year group so it doesn't get ruined for them. So I'll leave it at that. It was super fun. UKAEA graduate scheme is a chance to work at a leading scientific institute on a big science project, particularly something like JET, which is a big European project, in fact, a worldwide project from the number of people who come and work here. And that is not something often afforded to graduates, so it's a really exciting place to be working. There's also money. I'm not going to pretend that it's not also about money. So it's really nice to get your foot on a ladder like UKAEA, because you start off in a graduate level position, doing all this training, gaining all these responsibilities, and then you can take the next step straight after, and you can basically work your way up from there, which is really good. But that's kind of the formal things, that's the things that come with the graduate scheme. There's also the social aspect. So you start off on a graduate scheme with a group of people who are also freaking out about getting a real job in the real world, which is really nice. My year group, I think there were 19 of us. And we basically go on holiday with each other. We go on socials. That's all optional, but I'm just saying we're good friends. And that group of friends is spread out across the organization. So if you need to get something done, or if you're like, I need to understand this and I just do not understand this, there's always someone working in that department who can point you in the right direction. We also go on trips together. So I think 2 years ago, we went to Harwell, to their science campus to see the diamond light source and stuff, and that was really, really fun. As Callum mentioned, you have support from your mentor. You also have support from the other graduates, the graduate panel who run the graduate scheme, and ex-graduates. So mine and Callum's department is, I think there's about 12 of us, and it's got me and Callum who are current grads and 2 ex-grads. So kind of overwhelmed with graduates, but it means there's people there with experience and there's people there who understand what you're going through, in addition to obviously your line manager and stuff who can help out. The graduate scheme and UKAEA in general are really big on outreach. So if you want to get involved with outreach, there's a whole department and they're all super nice. And I'm not just saying that because they're listening right now. Outreach is one of the things I really enjoy. So if you go on our Facebook page, you might see my face a couple of times. And there's real opportunities to do it. Things like open days when the general public comes in, primary school visits, university visits. I've even done tours for places like the Advanced Manufacturing Research Centre when they decided to start their nuclear division. I did a tour for a bunch of professional people with important jobs, which was really exciting as well. There's also kind of competitions you can get involved with. That's always very much supported. They are optional, but it's something your line manager will let you do. And then, I don't know if we've emphasized this enough, but UKAEA is a really nice place to work. If you're coming straight from university, where they've got that open door policy and you can go in and talk to people, UKAEA has that as well. It's like a research institute, so people are always happy to talk about what they're doing and offer you advice. And because of that, people have started societies at work. So there are sports groups, and there's a group that, I can't remember what they're called, but they were booking trips to musicals in London and would book a coach, and you can get on the coach and you can go visit. And then the support networks, we've got a women's network, we've got some new ones starting up in October, the mental health first aiders as well. So it's just, in addition to all these technical things and the chance to really get on the job ladder, there's all these extra things from UKAEA that's just, it's a really nice place to work. And there's a lot of support, as particularly as Callum said, you're allowed to pick what career you want to do, the direction you want your career to go in. So if there's something you're interested in, you're supported in doing that. Applications. This was your bit, sorry.
Right. Thank you. So the opening date for the application process, so if you're applying for the graduate scheme next year, 2021's intake, the applications will open around August time, roughly, for the graduate scheme. So kind of keep an eye out for around about then. It might be a wee bit after that, but keep your eye open on the website. It'll come up on there, and it will stay open till around February in 2021. However, a point to make here is it may close early depending on how many people apply. So the advice here is apply as early as possible if you want to apply for this grad scheme. I actually got caught out in this. I waited till I finished all my coursework in November, and the scheme had closed in November, and it didn't open up again until January, which I hadn't realised. I got told about this, so I was night before my first exam filling out the application process because I was not going to miss this again. So the application process, first of all, it is an online application. That's the first step. Now this consists of you uploading your CV and then also answering some questions as well. Now, fortunately, this isn't just upload your CV and then answer a whole bunch of questions that your CV already answers. It's also asking you things about what your experience is and why do you want to work at UKAEA, so what is your motivation for wanting to work here. So it's actually quite enjoyable, but it's an interesting application process. It's a bit different from the run-of-the-mill ones you normally do. If you successfully get through this stage, you will then get a phone interview, which is typically about 3 people kind of phone you up in a phone call, and they'll ask you some technical questions. And it's just nothing too rigorous, but it is basically to make sure that you know roughly what you're talking about and that you have done the degree that you say you've done. So they'll just ask you stuff that someone who's done your degree will know about. And once again, it's also to kind of gauge your enthusiasm and motivations for wanting to work down at Callum. And if you get past that stage, you'll then be invited down to an assessment day here at Callum. It lasts the full day. And when you arrive here, you'll be split into small groups of around 4 people, and you'll do the entire day with this group of 4. Now, the day will consist of, you'll have 2 tours, one of which will take you around the JET area of site. So you'll get a bit of information of how JET works. You'll get to see the control room. You can see some of the remote handling. You might even get to see a bit of JET if the doors are open. So that's really cool. And the best thing about these tours is they're run by the current graduates. So you get a chance to just speak to graduates one-on-one, ask any questions about the scheme or moving here, or just general things that you might not wish to ask the interviewers about, essentially. I think the most recurring question is, I finished my degree, I know nothing. What's going to happen? Don't worry, we're all in the same boat. None of us knew anything. We came here and it's all fine. It all works out. You also get a tour of RACE, which is the remote applications for challenge environments site. So you get to see some cool robots up there and virtual reality of JET and things. It's mad. It's really cool. There's obviously an interview. So once again, that's you and 3 interviewers. And that's just kind of a bit more of an in-depth probe of your technical ability. Once again, it's nothing too strenuous. If you've done your degree, you should be fine. I actually found it quite enjoyable. I thought it was quite fun. And there's also a presentation, which you present in front of the other 3 people in your group, and there'll also be some members of the grad panel as well. So you give your presentation, they'll ask you a few questions, and then it's someone else's go. It's nothing too bad, to be honest. Also at lunch, a lot of the current graduates will turn up for lunch as well, so you get another opportunity to speak to them and find out more about the grad scheme. If you've got any questions that you want to know, anything. It's a really fun day, actually. I quite enjoyed it. Getting here was fun, but once you get to here in the day, it's really good fun. You get to see quite a bit of site. Like, Callum's quite wide. It's based on an old airfield, so quite a bit of walking if you want to go between different areas. It keeps you fit. I'm missing that right now, actually. But finally, what is UKAEA looking for in a graduate? I think we both kind of touched on it through the things you're saying, but essentially, I guess it kind of boils down just to enthusiasm, kind of knowing what you're talking about roughly in your degree, and wanting to work here, knowing about fusion and wanting to work in fusion. That's sort of my takeaway from what they want. Do you have anything you'd add to that?
No, I agree. I'm obviously working in an engineering role, having done a physics degree, but I very much rocked up to the interview with all of my enthusiasm, and just kind of chatted about why I wanted to work here and why I was excited. I was pretty much bouncing off the walls all day. Like, I had a great time on the tour. I even enjoyed the interview, even though I was given a technical drawing and I'd never seen one in my life. So yeah, the UKAEA is looking for people with, you know, a positive attitude and a genuine enthusiasm for the job, above anything else, which is really nice. And it means a lot of the people who work here are passionate about fusion and are interested in their job, which I know isn't the case for everywhere. So yeah, I've lost my mouse.
Just so they asked us what was our challenge that we did in our interview. Can you remember what yours was?
Are we allowed to say, Ella? I feel like we're not allowed to say.
I'm not sure if they reuse them. I'm not sure. It was
they
mad.
Reuse them sometimes.
Yeah, it's mad crazy. It's not what you're expecting, but it's great fun. And you will be. It's not as easy as you think it's going to be. Put it that way.
Yeah, they change up the team challenge that they do, but I think they might be repeating some of them, so I don't want to say, just in case we ruin it.
Spoilers just yet.
So we have time for like a Q&A section. I've lost all my logos at the bottom of the screen.
Oh.
Yeah, we will try and get through as many as possible, but if there's any sort of job-related ones or graduate-related ones, you can send them to the early careers email address. And if there's any technical ones we don't get to, you can send it to our outreach team. We have a website for the grad scheme and many social media, and not just LinkedIn, like my presentation has chosen to show. I don't know what everyone else's is showing. But we have sort of LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter as well. So we share information like job opportunities and stuff. And we also have working from home Wednesdays, which is my new favorite thing, and I look forward to it every week. So yeah, I will open up the Q&A and we can have a look. So we have one, can MPhys students from abroad enroll to be a PhD student at UKAEA? I would say send that question to our early careers email address, just because I'm not sure specifically about PhD students, because I never had to go through that process. I don't know if you know anything, Callum.
So I was reading the questions. What was that?
I'm not sure of the application process for PhD students.
Oh yeah, enrolled to be a PhD student at UKAEA. Yeah, I think email early careers. I do remember Sue mentioning something about this, but I can't remember what the answer was.
Apologies.
Apologies, but yeah, email early careers and you'll get a detailed answer on that one.
As for what kind of things race work on, a lot of what they do is sort of protected, a big secret, because they do commercial bids a lot of the time. So some of what they do is sort of commercially sensitive. But I can tell you they work on all kinds of projects, including, I haven't mentioned ITER. So we have a big fusion device being built in the south of France. It's a big worldwide project. It's called ITER, ITER. So they're doing sort of design work for ITER. They're working on a concept design for a power plant with a fusion reactor in its core. And then they're also doing things for the space industry, mining industry. Nuclear decommissioning is a big one, but again, I can't get into the specifics because it's commercially sensitive. But yeah, they work on all sorts in race. It's a really cool place to visit if you do get to come here, particularly if they've got all of their little robots out in the design hall. It's always really exciting to see them all.
Just to touch on that a bit wider, it's not necessarily on race, but there's a lot of electrical engineers, electrical engineers on site that are kind of relatively high demand, because a lot of our power systems require a lot of electrical sort of electronic engineers to run them and operate them. and we're always in need of them as well. So
Yeah.
race is cool because it's got a lot of robotic stuff as well, but they're also required along to other bits of site as well. So there's quite a big scope for electrical engineers on site, along with a lot of other engineers, but just to touch on that point, I guess.
There's also a race webinar next week, I believe on Wednesday.
Ooh.
Oh, wait for Ella or Emily to message me. So hopefully they'll talk about more of the projects there and kind of more of the specifics, because Callum and I do not work there.
Wednesday
1:30. Thank you, Ella. So opportunities for people with 2-2s or 2-1s. The graduate scheme, I believe, asks for a 2-1 in your degree, I think. But in terms of other opportunities, again, it would be worth messaging our early careers people, because they might be able to help you look at other options, or look at other options basically. Or it might be that in a particular department it's less important to them that you have a first or whatever. So yeah, it's probably worth dropping an email. Ooh, long distance jobs. Callum, do you know of any long distance jobs?
I'm not too sure actually, because a lot of them require some sort of presence on site.
Yeah, so on site we have things like design reviews, we have physical working on things. So in addition to like designing, we chair meetings and physically go and install our things. So in terms of long distance,
physics might be able to, if it's like if they're sort of in modeling and physics, they don't actually require hands-on, they can like enter Zoom meetings and stuff.
Yeah, we have an email, I think it's recruitment@UKAEA.UK, or again, you can send it to early careers and I'm sure they can pass you on to recruitment if you're looking for specific jobs like that. Any you want to grab?
So I'm a slow reader.
All right.
Go to the career infusion. What would you recommend? Right. Okay, we'll go for this one. I think because we've kind of So, unfortunately, I missed this year's deadline to apply for the robotics grad scheme. Do you know when application will be open for next year? So that'll be roughly autumn of this year, so about August, end of August, beginning of September. The applications will be open again for the 2021 grad scheme. So keep an eye out sort of the end of August, and it should appear, and you'll be able to apply then. So yeah, hopefully that answers that one.
So many questions.
Oh, from Laura. Here, let's try this one. I'm studying a physics and maths degree, part-time around my current job, expected to complete in 2024. How can I obtain a career in fusion? What do you recommend? Well, if it's part physics, obviously if you get to choose any modules, selecting ones to do with nuclear physics would be beneficial to you. Also, just having a outside understanding of nuclear fusion, so just in your spare time reading up on it and looking at it, so you've got an understanding of what's actually going on and what's kind of currently going on in fusion at the moment. So ITER is kind of the big thing that's happening in the world of fusion right now, and that's going to be, I think it's still meant to be 2025-ish, is meant to be finished. So that's sort of a big project to keep an eye on, and also there's a lot of new projects kind of starting at UKAEA that are worth kind of looking into and reading up on. So both these websites, you're just going to scroll through them, look through it. That's probably the best place to start, I'd reckon. But you don't need a degree specifically in fusion, because very few people here have done solid fusion related courses. It's all just physics or science or engineering. You don't need to have that. So what you're doing, physics and maths degree, is probably a very good starting point from where you're at. Just having an understanding of kind of what's going on with fusion at the moment, I reckon, is probably your best bet. Just be aware of that. That's probably a good shout. Obviously, Callum's still going to be here in 2024. Also, depending on where you are, where you're planning on working, ITER is also quite a good option potentially, because we'll be kicking off around that time as well. If you want to get into Fusion.
Oh, that'd be fun.
That would be fun. Massive. I'd be very scared to stand on that.
I won't stand on that one. I'll get irradiated. We have a question about accommodation when we first arrived. So when we sort of had our contracts through, the graduate panel got in touch with us. Sorry, I forgot who I was and what I was doing for a second there. So the grad panel got in touch with us and asked if it would be okay if we shared our email addresses with the other graduates, so we could basically get in contact with each other, and then we all asked each other on Facebook. So the next steps were finding out who to live with and where. So we actually, a few of us met up. So because of where we were in the country, I met up with a few graduates in Nottingham. They came up, I went down, and we met in Nottingham and sort of had a chat, and I immediately picked my housemate, and I've been living with her ever since, which is awesome. So yeah, there's support finding accommodation. So if you have questions about where you could live, you can ask other graduates. I think the main areas are Oxford, which is Oxford, Abingdon, which is the next nearest town, Didcot, which is further away but cheaper, and another big sort of town area. And I think there's a few of your year living in Reading.
Yes.
Because of its connections to London.
Yeah.
So there's support finding accommodation, but mostly we kind of found it on our own and met up with each other, and it was all very cute. And some people chose to live alone, which luckily we can do on our salary.
When you get to is it after the graduate interview day that you come back down again? If you're successful in like getting a place, you get invited down for a day to meet all the new graduates and your potential managers.
I never got to do that.
And part of that is they'll get some of the older graduates to present the living options in the area, so they can give you some advice. So if you get to this stage, the graduates on the scheme will kind of give you information if you've no idea what's going on down here, and they can give you some hints on where's good for different things. So it kind of eases the nerves a bit when that's given, I reckon. Oh,
yeah, that's a nice thing that they've added. Actually, I don't think we properly met each other until we met up on our own. So it's nice that your group got to actually meet.
It's good because you obviously recognise some of the people that were interviewing with you. So at least you had some people you knew to start off with. Nice. It was great. It's good to say, have I seen this person before? I don't know. I'm not going to speak to them. I'm not quite sure. So we've got one. Any job opportunity in HR, or is it all engineering? Yeah, there is HR, there's procurement, there's payroll. So there is opportunities, yes. In terms of graduate scheme ones, I think there is, but I could be wrong. The job opportunities in HR.
I believe so. I believe some of the new sort of cohort coming in at the end of this year, some of them might be in sort of HR and finance.
So yes, our answer is we think this is the case. Would probably recommend you email Early Careers just to double check on this, but we're pretty sure it's not just engineering and science that is the graduate scheme. It is across site. We are expanding, and they need graduates everywhere. It varies from year to year as well. So some years a department might say, we need 3 graduates, and other years they might not be looking for them. So it does vary. Just because we've not hired people in a certain area before doesn't mean we're not going to next year. Yep.
Someone asked the question, everything moved. Oh, there it is. I graduated last year. What would you recommend I do between now and Christmas 2020? And should I get some relevant experience? So if you can get relevant experience in the thing you want to do, that is absolutely worth doing. I think I got quite lucky in that I got a job at UKAEA with no previous experience. Like I wasn't even able to I didn't get a summer placement. I didn't really have any work experience. So I think I got quite lucky in that respect. So if you can get work experience in the area you want to work in, it's absolutely worth doing. Even if you don't get on this graduate scheme, it's useful to everyone. in terms of what you could be doing, if you're interested in fusion, I'd recommend reading all about the fusions. Basically building your knowledge base. If there's an area you particularly want to work in, there's a lot of like free courses online at the moment because of lockdown. So if you can find something that's interesting to you, it's absolutely worth doing. Anything to kind of broaden your understanding or your CV. Yeah, don't feel super pressured though. It's more to broaden your interest kind of thing. Yeah.
There's some good ones down at the bottom here.
There's some really good ones.
I'm going to go for this one firstly, Charlie. So is there any difference in training and job options between a physics and engineering graduate? Yes, slightly, I reckon. So in terms of the graduate scheme, your training will be the same for the most part. However, because our jobs are different, the job where you're in, like the group you're in, might have slightly different training. So for instance, both Leah and I, we work sometimes on the reactor itself. So we have to do radiation and tritium training. So we understand the dangers associated with going into these reactor halls and knowing how to handle these dangerous materials and things. Whereas a physicist doesn't necessarily need to go into the reactor hall, depending on which area of physics they're working in. So in terms of that, yes, our training will be different. But in terms of the graduate scheme, it's fairly standard. In terms of what the grad scheme gives you, it'll all be the same. But in terms of where you lead your training or where you want to learn, it will be different.
Yeah, there's a few mandatory ones on the grad scheme that are like project management and time management, communications, that are sort of broader and more general. So like everyone does those. And then there are the specific ones that you can then say, I'm going to do this now.
Yeah. So physicists like coding and stuff, Python stuff, they'll need to know how to do that more. This we don't really. We don't really tend to do that in our day-to-day job. So a wee bit different, but in terms of the grad scheme, it's pretty standard between the different disciplines.
In terms of ITER and the site in France, we, I think, might be planning a trip at some point, which is very exciting. But you can also do, where does the emphasis go in secondment? There, it goes there. So you can take time out of your job and go work at ITER for a bit and come back and your job will still be here. So a graduate in the year above went to work for ITER and secondment. That isn't where the emphasis goes, but he will come back at some point, hopefully. So there's very much support at UKAEA if you want to go and work there. I don't know if it's necessarily the grad scheme scope, but in terms of what UKAEA support, if you want to go work at ITER permanently or for a small amount of time, that is like very much on the cards, which I think is great and I hope to do at some point.
Also, you can do a lot of ITER work here because we receive a lot of bids from ITER to design things and build things for them. So there's a lot of projects. A lot of the projects that are going to be coming up for Leah and me are from ITER in our department. So helping to design and build things for ITER because they haven't been designed yet because it's not at that stage. They're still building the reactor itself, whereas we're more diagnostics. So they're the last thing to add, sort of thing. So there's loads of bids across site for ITER. So even if you work here, you can still be working on ITER. You could be working on our reactors. You could be working on STEP. It's a whole scope of things you could be working on. Just depends, really.
Do you have one? I have one.
If you want to go. I'll have a wee read.
Itchy nose. So there's one here talking about how when fusion's discussed, sometimes the sort of aspects that need work aren't really talked on. Things like making it economically viable and sort of the challenges associated with it. At UKAEA, those conversations do actually happen. Our CEO, Ian Chapman, is like very upfront about things. He's often in Parliament because obviously things like Brexit have affected us. So he's actually very open and honest about challenges, and the challenges are talked about a lot actually because it's what makes the job interesting. So for example, all of the departments are facing all different kinds of challenges, and that links together into some of the challenges of fusion. Things like materials, how long we can run experiments for. So it's something that's discussed at UKAEA, and it's something that's kind of reveled in because the challenges of fusion are what makes it fun to work on. Otherwise it would just be us doing it immediately. So yeah, those are conversations that happen at UKAEA. And oh yeah, I forgot to mention that Ian was also a graduate. Our CEO is ex-graduate scheme. Oh, yeah. He climbed his way all the way to the tippy top. But yeah, the challenges of fusion are what makes it so fun. So it isn't something we avoid at UKAEA. It's something we chat about, particularly with our reactors. We have meetings about what the problems are, which is awesome. But yeah, that's a really good question, because I agree. Oftentimes in the media, when fusion's talked about, they kind of ignore the challenges, and those are the best bits.
Yeah, that's what makes it fun.
Yeah.
So here's one. I'm a third year engineering going into an MSc in nuclear science and technology. Degree is primarily focused around fission. Would I still be able to find a place at UKAEA? Yeah, like you know a lot about sort of nuclear physics. It's only a small step to fission, or to fusion from fission. They go hand in hand quite a bit, and you understand kind of the problems, issues, dangers of a nuclear reactor, and most of them are sort of the same for a fusion reactor. There's a lot of dangerous stuff going on that have to be controlled in a sensible manner. A lot of the handling, I imagine, is quite similar as well. But as I say, a lot of people on site don't have degrees relevant to fission or fusion, and they still work here. So it's an advantage, yes, but you're not going to miss out, essentially, based off that degree. It's a good thing to have, I reckon. So you should be fine with that.
Is that the one at Birmingham? There's a graduate who did that course at Birmingham.
Yeah,
I was he settled in right fine.
Reading it, I was just like, that sounds familiar.
We have, do you have to do a master's before considering the graduate scheme? No, we've got people who've done bachelors and people who've done PhDs, so a master's is not at all required. If you want to do one, you are more than welcome to, but it's not a requirement for the grad scheme. And we also have how valuable. Oh, how dare you steal my question? No, you go for it.
Oh, how valuable is theoretical understanding? Do you recommend I read fusion theory from now until the application? It helps, and definitely the sooner you start trying to learn it, the easier it will be, because this isn't something you can just read and understand straight away. The initial concept is quite straightforward, but the underlying physics does get quite dense quite quickly. It depends how much physics you know before you start reading, to be honest. I came from engineering. It was a very steep hill to climb. But the thing with this is, even though it's really hard to learn, it is also really interesting, so you want to learn it, you want to understand this. In terms of applying, yes, I think reading it, at least having an understanding of what goes on and the issues associated with it, like at least understanding why we haven't got fusion already, despite the amount of years we put into it, that's probably a really good place to start, because then you understand why we're doing everything we are doing in the next 20 years, sort of thing, everything we're planning on doing. So you don't need to know everything and be fluent in fusion physics, but having an understanding of what is going on in these reactors will help, just generally across the board, to be honest.
Yeah, it is pretty dense reading. I would only read it if you were interested. But yeah, like Callum says, having an understanding of the overview and the challenges and what we're up to here is more useful maybe than, what is it? Magnetohydrodynamics. Yeah, the maths is dense.
I would recommend probably like Wikipedia to start. It's actually quite good for understanding the basics of it. The websites ITER and UKAEA are actually quite informative, and they've got quite a good few links. And also YouTube, there's loads of videos on fusion that have got cool animations that explain what's going on. So it's a good place to get started if you want to understand just how a tokamak works and what we're doing at Callum. It's probably a good place, and you don't have to read. Videos are great.
No reading. There's a question about the job life balance as a graduate. So you are allowed to work overtime, and I think most of my overtime is outreach related overtime. although I did have to come in at 5 a.m. a while ago. It was a scaffolding related problem.
How about that?
But yeah, overtime is optional. There's weekends if you want to work them. There's night shifts if you work in a control room, or comms events that happen, communications events that happen at night, things like the open evening, the kind of nighttime events. But they are absolutely optional. If you work in a place that has a control room, like the heat department or one of the fusion devices, it might be that they expect you to do shifts in the control room, which I'm trying to remember when they are. I think they're 6 till 2 and 2 till 10 or 8, but they're sort of a morning shift and an evening shift. But again, it's very much an optional thing.
Yeah.
The job-life balance is pretty good. There's an emphasis on flexible working. So I tend to work, when I worked in an office, longer days during the week, and then I had a shorter Friday, and I just chilled out. And that's something you can arrange with your line manager informally, or you can put in a request and work a certain number of days a week. So the job-life balance is pretty darn good.
Yeah.
Do you want to answer a couple more? And then that will have been an hour.
Keep going. Let's see. Thank you so much for the time. Okay. Is it possible to specify which areas of UKAEA we want to work at? I don't recall having anywhere you can request it. Like when you apply for, depending on where your degree is, there'll be like a engineering application, there'll be a physics application, and then I think it's when you get to near the end of the process, the managers of the departments will start picking, I think, the graduates that they think will work best in their department based off various things. I don't actually know exactly, because I obviously haven't been in that meeting, but I think you can, like, if there was any request, you can say I'm interested in this particular area. I don't think there's like any formal process for requesting which area you work in, but if there's a specific area you're very keen to work in, I think we will take that into consideration.
Yeah, if you write that's what you're interested in, then for example, if you say I'm interested in robots, I'm sure Race will notice on your application form.
Yeah. If you're a chemical engineer, you'll probably be in heat.
Yeah, I think you can ask, but it's not necessarily a definite thing. But even if you were to say, end up working in the MRF when you wanted to work in the active gas handling facility, you can do placements there and see if you prefer it or not, which is really a great option. I do one more.
What have we got?
Oh, maybe one last one on the application process. So what's the most important thing to keep in mind, or what's the most important tip? UKAEA is looking for people who are interested in working there. So I would say, like, the best tip is to, read up on Fusion and what we're doing, and things like that, basically. So if you come to the interview or you go to the application process and say, I'm genuinely interested in this, look, I'm talking about it. That's probably the best advice that we can give you, is to show you're interested, because they want people who are interested in Fusion and in UKAEA. So I'd say that was probably the most important thing.
There's two just near the bottom, I think, that are quite... let's see. First one, can you suggest any good reading materials to learn more about Fusion? There's a lot. It depends on your background and how well you understand physics. For me, coming from an engineering background, a good book I read was... hold on a minute, let me just have a good look. There's that book that you just bought there, if you want to mention that one briefly, because that's quite a good read.
The book that's propping up my computer.
That's the one.
1 second. Yes, such art. I have purchased this book, Introduction to Plasma Physics and Controlled Fusion. If you're a physicist who's interested in working at UKAEA or is interested in learning more about fusion, this has got everything in it, with a focus on plasmas, because we deal with plasmas, superheated gases, and how they behave inside a fusion device, basically. So it's a really good reference book as well, if you are interested at all. And I think at the moment on Springer, the publisher, it's got a little horse, this book, the PDF is free. So if you're interested in looking at it and seeing if it'd be useful to you, it's literally free right now, which is awesome.
And a book that I would recommend, especially if you're coming from a sort of engineering and not quite physicsy background, is Principles of Fusion Energy, an Introduction to Fusion Energy for Students of Science and Engineering by A.A. Harms. And that's really good. It explains the physics behind it, like the plasma physics, and then it goes on to explain how the reactors work, a bit about inertial confinement fusion, and it's got some reference tables and everything. It's great. It's not dense, it's not complicated. It's quite a good book just to read. That will get you an understanding of how these things work. There is the Bible, which is Tokamaks by John Wesson, but I wouldn't recommend you read that. It's dense and it's a reference textbook. You need to know what you're talking about before you read that.
It's great though.
It's very helpful, but
everyone's favorite book at UKAEA.
Exactly. So I think that's a good place to start. And just have a look around, basically, is the best thing. Just find a book that you can understand from there. But these are probably a good place to start reading, I think. The book I mentioned especially helped me understand fusion. Oh, also, An Introduction to Tokamaks by John Wesson is also online free, the PDF. That's a really good book because that's specifically to JET, the reactor, the big reactor we have on site. And that is actually even easier, I think, to understand than the one I've just mentioned. So yeah, read that book. And it's not too long.
That was really good referencing advice. I don't think I could name that many things.
I've had to reference that book a lot, so that's why it's stuck in my head.
So, did you want to answer another one?
Yeah.
Okay.
The one beneath it. What do you think set you apart from other applicants that weren't accepted? Do you think it was mainly enthusiasm? Anything else? Go.
What set me apart?
It's hard to know.
Like a job interview.
Yeah.
Why should you hire me? I think enthusiasm plays a big role. I tend to get quite heavily involved in the graduate application day, like the assessment centre, and not just because there's a free lunch if you get involved. I like chatting with the applicants and doing the tours and stuff, and reassuring everyone that it's going to be okay. And you can tell who's excited to be there and who's not that fussed. And it's kind of like, I don't know, I think enthusiasm is a big one. Even if you're nervous, maybe oh, this is cool. But I also think if you've got work experience, that can set you apart. If you actually know about fusion when you're in interviews or doing your presentation, that's always a big one. But I don't know. I walked in and I was all happy, so that may have influenced in some way.
No, interest and enthusiasm. You kind of they want to see that you want to be there, and you're interested in what's going on the site. That's sort of a big thing, I reckon. Is any other big ones? Or we answered most of them? Oh, you've already answered that one.
Yeah, should we direct the rest to the emails?
I think so. Yeah, 'cause we can't answer that one. Oh, this is one that we probably should mention briefly. Where do you get relevant internship work experience during the degree? Callum actually does summer placement, which is it's around 8 to 10 week summer placements across site at UKAEA. It's the application process like that of the graduate scheme, and they accept applications for summer placements early in January, and they will start around June of that same year. So you'll be applying January 2021 for a placement in June 2021 if you want to get a work placement here, which is like 8 to 10 weeks, which is, you're pretty much doing the same, not quite the same thing a graduate would be doing, probably. It'll be a bit less, but you'll get a good understanding of the kind of project work that goes on site. And in 8 to 10 weeks, you can get quite involved in something that's going on.
Yeah, we've had 2 students who came in last year are enrolled on this year's graduate scheme because they were very, very competent by the time they'd finished. And another student who came has now got, I think, a placement at Harwell, which is really exciting, the big science campus not far from here. So it's actually a really good placement opportunity, and there's a lot of responsibility in the role, and there's always graduates to help you if you are fearful.